right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, just gonna make sure my sound is correct here. Good morning, come on in. So, good morning, welcome to Tuesday. Yesterday, of course, we had a quiz, and I was just asking the students in class, how did it go? Sounds like the first question was a little rocky, but did it get better after that? A little bit, or did it just go? And online people, I hope the quiz went okay for you too. But at the very, what's that? Of course, what? It was a pleasure to actually meet you face to face. That was really fun. Good morning. That was really fun. So I'm glad we were able to do that. And I'll try to have everything marked this evening and have the marks posted, and then we can talk about the quiz tomorrow and see where we went right and where we went wrong and so forth. So I'm just going to say hello to some people who are here. So Nicole is here. Good morning, Nicole. It was nice to meet you yesterday. Aza, good morning to you. Nice to meet you too. Simrat is here, and I don't think I was able to connect with you yesterday, Simrat, but good morning. Abby is here. Good morning, Abby. And Ryan is here. Good morning or good evening to you, I guess. And Shania is here. Good morning, Shania. So where we were on Friday? Where we were on Friday? So on Friday we were in the middle of watching, or partway through watching Mean Girls, right? And I said that this was kind of a Hollywood movie, and it remains some people's favorite. It seems to have aged well. Sometimes, high school movies are made to be very kind of current in the moment, and then you look at them 10 years later, and they're, they don't work the same because culture has changed and kids have changed. But I feel like this one still kind of resonates a little bit anyway. But we were watching it, and we were looking at it through kind of a sociological lens. We were going to try and figure out what was going on in this movie and what could we learn about socialization and social hierarchies and group norms and all kinds of things. And so we said on Friday that question number one here, Katie had been homeschooled before she arrived at that public school. And so there's a bunch of things she doesn't know. What kind of things did she not know? Right, she didn't quite understand who the people on top, who had the most power and who had the least power, and she didn't really understand that there even was a social hierarchy, right? It was Janice and Damien who were kind of explaining it to her, right? What else did she not know? Right, that the Halloween costume rule, apparently, dressing scary is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to dress really sexy for Halloween. Apparently that's a rule, but she didn't know that. What else? I actually thought her Halloween costume was pretty clever. An ex-wife. Good stuff. Anyway, what else did she not know? Good morning. What else did Katie not know?
About her friend's ex-boyfriend.
Oh, right. So she definitely didn't know that Regina had dated Aaron Samuels in the past, but she also didn't know that you weren't supposed to like boys that other girls had dated, right? So she didn't really know that. What else? She didn't really know. She didn't really know that she had to ask permission to go to the washroom, which I still think is ridiculous. But anyway, she didn't realize that she had to do that. There was, she had to sit in a certain place and don't read ahead and don't eat in class. And there were all these kind of rules that she had no kind of exposure to, right? And we said that it was because she hadn't really been socialized, right? She hadn't been socialized in that society, in the high school society, and so she didn't really know the sort of the norms of behavior, right? And so she was kind of stumbling around. She wasn't really sure what to do or how to behave or where to sit, and she made lots of little mistakes, but of course people corrected her. we said that the high school had a bunch of social groups, right? There was the Asian nerds, and the cool Asians, and the un- the who?
Plasticals.
The plastics. Yep. The who
The
else?
artists.
The artists. Yeah.
Sexually active group.
Yeah. The sexually active band geeks. The art freaks.
The math group.
The math group. The mathletes.
Nerd
The who?
Asians.
The Asian nerds were in there.
Greatest group.
The greatest people you will ever meet, right? Says Janice and Damien. The greatest people you will ever meet. Let me see. There was the jocks. There was the burnouts. There was all kinds of different groups, right? And
The ones who do not eat at
oh,
all.
yeah, the girls who don't eat at all.
The ones who eat the feelings.
The girls that eat their feelings, right? And so, yeah, so all of these groups are kind of circulating around the high school. And we said that, these groups kind of exist and they all have their own kind of standards of behavior, right? They'll all have their own little rules and norms. But how do people know what group they would belong to? Like if you walked into that cafeteria, how would you kind of attempt to figure out who you would sit with? What's that? Yeah, you might look for people who looked like you, right? Who dressed like you, people who might be interested in the same things as you, right? If you were a musician and you saw a bunch of kids hanging out with their instruments at their table, then you might, drift over there, right? Or if you were big into football and you saw the football players' table, you might drift over there and see if you could sit with them, right? You'd look for people who looked like you, right? And in the high school here, that seems to have a bit of that seems to play out in kind of a hobby way, right? So there's interest groups like art and band and football and things like that, and math. But there's also good morning. But there's also other things that are working too, right? So gender has something to do with it. Race or ethnicity seems to have something to do with it, right? I'm pretty sure all the Asian nerds are Asian, and all of the unfriendly black hotties are black. I don't know how unfriendly they are, but I guess we'll find out. Actually, we won't find out. This is a very white movie in that way. we won't really hear from the unfriendly black hotties again. What else? What else kind of sets these groups apart? Hobbies, appearance, gender, race. What's that?
Behavior.
Behavior, right? How do you mean that?
Well, each party or stereotype behaves differently when they encounter a situation. That's what I believe.
Okay. So say that again. Every group behaves differently when they encounter
Something like a situation.
Right. And what's kind of the determining factor in their behavior?
Math.
Math.
I think so. I'm not really sure.
It all comes down to math.
That's what I see. I can't really tell for sure.
Okay. What are some other ideas? What do you think? What's another thing about behavior that determines who belongs in what group? Abby says here the groups have different values. That's definitely true, right? They value different things. But there's kind of I think we said on Friday there's kind of a coolness factor as well, right? Some of these groups are recognized as cool. Some of these groups are recognized as not very cool, right? And we said that confidence had something to do with it. Money probably had something to do with it, at least in terms of the plastics anyway. Yeah, the way they dress, right? Fashionable people are closer to the top of the hierarchy, and less fashionable people.
Does the way they talk count?
The way they talk counts? Okay. Well,
Wait, so does the way they talk count as a part of the groups?
I think so. What do you think? the way you,
Talk.
yeah, does that, is that a feature of what group you might belong to?
That's part of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I think so. I think it is, yeah. But it's an important part, right? Because that's often how people learn things about us and kind of figure out who we are, right? They listen to the things coming out of our mouths and they try to sort of put together a picture of who we are. Yeah. So there's money, there's appearance, there's kind of coolness or confidence. There's how people behave, how they speak. Their interests, their race or ethnicity, their gender, all of those things are kind of determining what groups people kind of belong to. We said the plastics had their own kind of rules, and what were some of those rules, really quick?
You have to wear according to the dress code.
Right.
If not, you be separated.
Yeah, this group has a dress code, right? A pretty strict one, right? And so, yeah, you have to follow the dress code, or you're going to be made to. You can't sit with them at lunch, right? Which, again, we said didn't seem like much on the surface, but was probably a pretty powerful incentive, right? Because you would be shunned by the group, you would be ignored by the group, which is hard for us social beings. We don't like to be ignored by people. But then it's going to happen in front of everybody, right? The entire cafeteria is going to see that you got kicked out. And so everyone's going to be talking about you, and I wonder why they're sitting alone. And because of that, it's a very effective punishment, right? And so the girls stay in line, right? They follow the rules. They wear pink on Wednesdays and only ponytails one day of the week, and sweatpants or jeans on Friday only. And when they go shopping, they make sure everyone agrees that they should buy and wear that thing, right? The rules are there, and the rules are pretty strictly followed, right? Can you think of any kind of rules in your group of friends, either here or at home, that you kind of had? Rules that the group kind of had to follow? Beyond the normal ones of, don't be a jerk, like be nice to people. But were there any kind of special ones? Hmm? Would you say that group had kind of particular norms of behavior, though? Like, were there things that you and your friends kind of shared, like jokes or handshakes or dance moves or some sort of something? Was there anything like that? Things that just your circle of friends did or had in common? No? You have no idea what I'm talking about?
No, I think their friend group isn't normal.
What's that?
Their friend group, like plastics, is not normal.
It's not normal?
Like the whole dress code and the way they speak, it's not really
What do you guys think about that? Is it not normal what's going on with the plastics and their very clear rules?
Yeah, I don't think people in real life have that.
Don't think so?
Maybe they just want to be unique.
I think they definitely do, right? And they're obeying those rules does set them apart, right? It does make them a very visible group, right? Their fashion is all, kind of the same, and it's all on point. They're wearing pink every Wednesday, so that kind of identifies them as a group. So I think that's very true. I think that's very true. Do you think maybe younger kids have more rules like this? Do you think, like a group of younger kids might have little rules that they have to obey in a friend group? No? Maybe. I almost feel like it's a bit of a juvenile thing, right? Like, that like little kids would have rules for each other, and you can't do that, and and they'll kind of police each other in a very obvious fashion, right? They'll have very clear expectations for their friends, and if their friends don't do it, they'll make a fuss or get in a fight, right? So, yeah, I do think that the way that the rules for the plastics are shown in this movie is a little juvenile. Like it's a little bit, you know, they're a little too old for that. But also, I think what they're doing is actually something that we all do in society and with our groups of friends. It's just that the rules are more subtle, right? And often they're much more aligned with greater society, right? So here they have these rules that, you know, nobody in society follows the rule that you wear pink on Wednesday.
Yeah, but it shows that very stereotype.
Wh-
I think so.
What's that?
Like, you said, like, they think everyone who wear glasses are nerd, or who has diet, they drink only one Coke with 5, you know?
That's a very good observation. Is there a lot of stereotype stuff going on in this movie?
Yes,
Yes.
jokes them, right?
And what?
You know,
Jokes.
I thought it was like from a comedic point of view.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, right? There is a leaning on stereotypes here, and I think that's starting to change. But I think in the past it was, well, I mean, maybe I'll let you answer that question. Why do you think there's so many stereotypes? Let's just stick with this movie. Why do you think there's so many stereotypes in this movie? Obviously, the writers could have written anything they wanted, right? But yet they kind of leaned on some obvious stereotypes. Why did they do that? For people to relate? Yeah. What? Okay. For people to relate. Give me more than that.
To appeal to a wider audience, to appeal to a wider audience.
Okay. So why do you think those stereotypes help people relate and appeal to a wider group?
Maybe just people in that generation thought that it was funny.
Are you saying that people of this generation do not think it's funny?
Not as funny.
Yeah, I would say that this generation is definitely more aware of stereotypes than the one that was watching that movie 16 years ago or 17 years ago. I would say that is definitely the case. But why? Why? So okay, maybe because of the humor thing. Maybe it was funny back then. Personally, I think there's another reason, but I'm curious to see if anyone else thinks it too.
Wait, what's the question?
The question is, well, why do you think they have leaned pretty heavily on stereotypes in this film?
Because it shows them more clear, you know. If you look at them, you understand, yeah, these are men, they are men, or they are like fat girls, you know.
Yeah, it's more clear.
Clear. Yeah.
And why is that? Why is that helpful? Do you think? If you're making a movie.
Well, people would like to see somebody like them on TV. I mean, it's high school, like, the whole point of stereotypes is that it's so obvious that where you fit.
Right.
So people would like to see that, like, oh, hey, you know, see.
Okay, so part of it might be, you know, having a diverse group of people in the background so that, you know, people can connect, right? Oh, that was me in high school. There I was, probably part of that group or that group. So that's probably to Nicholas's point, right? It helps people relate if they can see people they identify with. But Daniel, you were saying there's almost like a clarity there, right? So you look at the Asian nerds, and you kind of know who they are, right? They're Asian, they're nerdy. What else do we need to know, right? In 2 words, you've kind of figured this group out, right? Same thing with the jocks, right? They play football. They're probably pretty good-looking guys. Are they smart guys? Stereotypically, not really, right? They're a bunch of dumb guys, right? But again, very quickly, you can identify groups of people. And I think that's where the clarity comes in, because who's this story really about? Whose story is this?
The white girls.
Yeah, it's the story. It's Katie's story, right? to some degree, it's probably Regina's story and maybe the other two girls, Gretchen and Karen. It's kind of their story, right? And everyone else is kind of a little more in the background, right? They're supporting characters. And so in a 2-hour movie, do we have time to deal with every supporting character and how complicated they are? No, we don't have time for that, right? So we're just going to throw a bunch of stereotypes at you. And so you very quickly figure out who everyone is in the high school. So you're like, okay, I get the setting, I get what's going on. Now I can focus on Katie and Regina and what's going on with them. And Damien's the same way, right? Damien is gay. Is he very stereotypically gay? He kind of is, right? He's very what you would expect from a gay character. And so, again, he's kind of stereotyped as well. And it's just, you know, it's kind of, it just allows the audience to figure things out quickly so they can focus on who the real story's about.
So, when the girls say that Damien is gay, do they mean that he's happy or homo?
Homosexual.
Oh.
He seems happy as well, but that's not how they mean it. So, yeah, so he seems happy, but yeah, he's homosexual, he's gay, and he's very stereotypically gay. But again, do we have a lot of time for Damien? No, he's a supporting character. He's a little bit of comic relief, right? Just like Kevin G, right? Kevin Napur, who just did that rap at the talent show. And, you know, he's interesting because he's breaking the stereotype, right? He's a mathlete, he's captain of the mathletes. He's supposed to be kind of nerdy, but instead he's kind of, you know, he's got this cool thing and he's confident and he's an MC. And so he's funny because he's kind of breaking the stereotype, right? He's not what you would expect. But a lot of other people in this movie are exactly what you would expect. And again, I think it's, you know, it's just to save time, right? And to get to the point. You're in a high school, there's all these groups that you're familiar with. Normal high school, now you can focus on Katie and Regina. But, and this is maybe the last thing we'll say about this for now, it doesn't mean that using those stereotypes isn't necessarily a problem, right? So the stereotypes that are used in this film are not meant to hurt anyone or invalidate anyone or make fun of anyone necessarily, but it doesn't mean they don't have a negative effect, even though they're there. I just don't think the people who made the movie were intentionally trying to do anything damaging, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Okay, so you want to watch a little bit more?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see, we're at 25 here. Let's watch, let me see. Let's watch 35 minutes of it. Take a break, 10-minute break, and then we'll come back, okay? So for online people, you'll be able to find that in the library. If you go through library and find materials and streaming videos and then Criterion on demand, then you'll be able to find the movie just where you found it on Friday. And I'll put, where's my little timer here? I'm going to put 45 minutes on the clock because that's about the time we'll need. And yeah, so online people will go watch 35 minutes of the movie, then take a break, then come back and we'll talk, and we'll do the same thing here, okay? So we'll see you in just a little bit. There. Okay, people, we are back. We're getting towards the end of this film, but we're not quite there yet. And I just wanted to, I'm going to get rid of this countdown here. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a few questions we can answer here. So number 4, I wanted to ask you, we hear Katie say that, right? So what's happening for Gretchen in the group? What's happening for her?
She's being quote unquote cracked.
She's being, they're Katie and Janice and Damien are trying to crack her, right? But what does that mean? What's happening?
Try and get her to share everything about Regina.
Right. One of the first things we learn about Gretchen in the film is that she knows everybody's secrets, right? That's why her hair is so big. It's full of secrets. She knows everything. And so they want her to spill all of her secrets so that they can use one of those secrets against Regina, right? That's true. But what's happening for her in terms of like from a personal standpoint, from Gretchen's personal perspective?
Felt like she's being, her spotlight is being taken away by someone else.
Kind of, right? She's kind of losing her standing in the group, right? She's kind of losing her place. How is that happening?
Her position is being replaced by Katie.
Right. Katie is kind of, because it's almost like, Regina's the queen, right, of this little group, and Gretchen is kind of her right-hand person, right? So Karen's a little bit, she's kind of the third member, right? But Gretchen is kind of the second in command, right? But Gretchen's being kind of pushed out, and Regina's starting to be really mean to her, right? She's snapping at Gretchen, and she keeps telling her that fetch is never going to happen, which it never did. Nobody ever said that. She's starting to be mean to Gretchen, and Gretchen feels she's kind of losing her standing, right? She's losing her place in the group. But even though she's kind of worried about that, and Regina is being awful to her, and Gretchen is clearly stressed by the whole situation, Katie says, well, Gretchen knows it's better to be in a group than outside of one. And why do you think she says that? Because Gretchen does seem to be unhappy. But why is it better to be in that group than out of it?
Because you belong.
What's that?
Because you belong.
Because she belongs to the plot. Give me a little bit more than that.
You don't want to be casted out. You want to be in, like, everybody has, because where would you go if not plastics?
Right. So we're social animals, right? We like to be part of a group, right? Whether it's our friends or our family or our sports team or our school or our country, our religion, whatever it happens to be, we like to be part of a group, right? That's something that humans kind of need. And so Gretchen doesn't want to lose that. But also, what else did you say, Nasra? You said, kind of the last thing you said. Where would she go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where would she go, right? It seems like this school is very cliquey, right? There's lots of little social groups. And if she doesn't go to the plastics, who is she going to go in with, right? Where does she fit, right? What do you think about Gretchen's identity if she were to be kicked out of the plastics? What would that mean?
You mentioned before that if you get kicked out of a group, then you become a loner.
A little bit. You become a loner, but do you think that being plastic is part of Gretchen's identity, part of who she thinks she is?
Probably yes, because somehow serious she behaves when she got treated unfairly by her leader.
Yeah, she's very serious about being in the group, right? And you kind of have to be, because there's a lot of rules and pressure to being in this group. So if you're in it, you must really want to be in it. But I think she derives a lot of her identity from being in that group, right? That group, the plastics are the prettiest, most fashionable, most popular girls in school, right? That's the group. And if you're part of that group, what does that mean about you? You're pretty and popular and fashionable, and you're at the top, right? You're way up there. And so if she's not part of that group anymore, then who is she? Right? She's invested so much of herself, of her own identity, in the identity of the group, that to be kicked out is like, oh, well, now who am I? Right? And I think that you could probably say that of any social group that we might belong to, that we might like really want to belong to be kicked out of it or to leave that social group is like, okay, well then who am I now? Right? I thought this was a big piece of who I am, and now I'm not that. So what am I? Who am I? And of course, people at this stage of their life, people in high school, are kind of in the process of trying to figure out who they are anyway. And so to lose a big piece of that would be probably pretty traumatic for Gretchen, right? To lose that thing, right? I assume that all the jocks on the football team would feel similarly if they were cut from the football team, because football player is such a huge part of their identity, and then not to be on the team, it's like, well, who are they, right? They're just some kid, right? And they'll have to forge or create a new identity. And Gretchen will have to do that too, right? If she gets kicked out, spoiler alert, if she gets kicked out or if she leaves the group, she will have to somehow rebuild her identity, right? She'll have to refigure out who she is in this new context. So yeah, there's an identity piece, but there's also a social belonging piece. And we really want to belong to the group as humans, right? And sometimes our parents talk about, oh, peer pressure, don't bow to peer pressure. Have you ever heard that? People talk about that? And it's, yes, you should try to follow what you believe and don't be pressured by people, especially into doing things you don't want to do. But also, it's real, right? That's what's that? It's difficult to avoid, and it's difficult to resist, because again, it's an important part of how humans kind of ensure everyone follows the rules, right? We peer pressure each other, right? All of those Seinfeld clips, there's peer pressure to wear different clothes every day, is there not? Or societal pressure, right? Is there societal pressure to eat appropriately? Yes, right? The Snickers bar was a little weird, but there's pressure for that. Is there social pressure not to double dip your chips? Clearly there wasn't in the show. But yeah, so peer pressure is a thing. It's a powerful thing, and it's a way that humans kind of ensure that everyone follows the rules. But it's also, just because it's kind of normal and it exists doesn't mean that you don't need to resist it sometimes and make up your own mind. But still, it's a real thing, right?
I have a question.
Sure.
Why does everyone hate being a slut?
Ooh, great question. Great question. So the question is, for online people who might not have heard, the question is, why is it so bad? Why is being called a slut such a bad thing? Why is it such an insult? Why is it such an insulting word? I do want to talk about that, but I have a little place to talk about it in the sexism module. So I do want to come back to it. Does anyone want to offer an answer right now? Why is that such an insulting thing to be labeled?
It's only insulting the girls, though. Like,
It's o-
society rewards men for sleeping with multiple partners, but for women, it's punished by equals.
Right. So in terms of sexual behavior, there's a bit of a double standard, right? Men are rewarded for having multiple sexual partners. For women, of course, they are socially punished, and in some cases physically punished, but in many societies socially punished, and they get labeled with this negative word and other negative words as well. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that double standard exists? I see some head shaking, like, ugh.
Because women are supposed to be like untouched.
Yeah, there's a cultural value toward purity with regard to women, right? And virginity, right? That's a cultural value in, I'm going to say many, if not most societies. I don't want to speak for every, I'm not an expert in all cultures, but I'm going to say that in many societies that is highly valued. And similarly, not so much valued for men, right? Men are not expected to be pure in any way, right? And so, yeah, we have that different cultural value behind it. There's more to say about it. But Scotty, would it be okay if we just press pause on that question and come back to it?
Yes.
Because we will come back to it and we will answer it. But it's connected to some other things that we will get to. But it's an excellent question. It's a little early, but it's but it's an excellent question. What do you think about this one? Why does Katie start to act like Regina? Because she does, right?
Yes.
She starts to talk like her.
Because she wants her approval, so she's doing things just the way Regina would.
Right. So she wants Regina's approval, right? So she's copying her, right? She's talking like her. She's starting to manipulate other people, just like Regina manipulates other people. She's starting to dress like Regina, right? Remember, how is Katie dressed when we started this movie? Yeah, she was wearing like just jeans, right? Or, like a plaid shirt, and she had her little African bracelet or something that she had on, right? Very, what about her hair? Ponytail, right? Pretty simple, pretty, everyday clothing kind of thing. But now, how does she look? Like a plastic, right? She's done her hair. Her clothes are a lot tighter and a lot skimpier than they used to be. She got a tan. Did you notice that? Tan.
Yes.
Yeah, she got tan. She got more makeup, or maybe it's bronzer. I'm not sure what it is. But she's, changed her skin color a little bit. She's wearing more makeup, right? So she's become this thing, right? She's become part of the group. She's taken on that group identity. But yeah, she wants Regina's approval. But isn't that kind of weird? Because isn't she trying to destroy Regina? Isn't she angry at Regina because Regina stole the guy that she was interested in?
Yeah, she was trying to sabotage her, but the thing is that in order for a method to be effective, then she needs to be one of them.
That's true. And that was the original plan, right? She was going to sabotage them from the inside. She was going to act like one of them, but take down Regina in the process. But it seems like she kind of got a little bit lost in the plan, right? The plan was to pretend to be a plastic. The plan wasn't to become a plastic. But not only did she become a plastic, now she seems to be leader of the group, right? The other two girls are following her around looking for orders. So that's weird. How did that happen? Do you imitate people that you hate?
No.
Not very often, right? Usually you want to do the opposite of whatever someone you hate is doing, right? But what's going on here? They've spent a lot of time together. That's true. What else is happening? So that's true. So Katie is being socialized by Regina, even though she doesn't want to, right? Like she's being socialized anyway, almost against her wishes. And I think you can disagree with me here if you have other ideas. I'd love to hear them. But I think it's because Regina is such a powerful agent of socialization. She's so influential, right? Because in the school, she's got so much power. She's got so much social power, financial power. She's got psychological power because she's very manipulative, right? She's constantly, she's constantly pushing people, off balance, right? She's like telling them to shut up or being mean, and then the next minute she's like, love you, right? And so she's constantly, poking people and saying something hurtful, and then she's, throwing them a little breadcrumb of love, right? And she's going back and forth, manipulating them in this sort of, kind of toxic relationship, right? So, yeah, so Regina is so powerful. She's such a powerful agent of socialization that she manages to socialize Katie anyway, even while Katie is trying to destroy her. And I think kind of what this shows is that sometimes we're socialized whether we like it or not, right? Sometimes we absorb social messages and we start to act on them, even though we might not be totally aware of what's happening, right? And again, this is an extreme example, right? Most people probably wouldn't, it probably wouldn't be this obvious, but I think it is true that, yeah, we all absorb social messages and we act on them, and sometimes in ways that we're not even aware of. And so for Katie here, it's a little bit extreme for the movie, right? It's kind of played up, but that kind of happens, right? Before she really realizes it, she's acting just like Regina. And she kind of doesn't, I don't think she really realizes it until Janice and Damien drive by and Janice throws that painting at her, right? And then she kind of clues in. She's like, oh, what's happened here, right? How did I, somehow I'm behaving in a way that is contrary to my original values, but I didn't realize what I was doing, right? So, and I think that part of it is very real and very common, I think, for humans to be socialized against their will, and then sometimes to act on or say things that, if they thought a little harder about it, they wouldn't have said or they wouldn't have done. But, sometimes we just behave based on reactions, right? And so, again, I think for the movie, it's a little bit fictionalized and it's a little bit extreme, but I think what's actually happening is very normal, right? That's very common, I think. Okay, and last question here for you. So when Regina wears sweatpants and is required to sit at another table, what happens? Well, I guess that is what happens. She's required to sit at another table. But what aspect of socialization are we seeing? Yeah, Regina is being sanctioned, right? And what does she say when the girls say, you can't sit with us, you're wearing sweatpants on Monday? What does she say? Yeah, those rules aren't real, right? But does it matter?
It does matter.
It does matter. Well, does it matter that the rule is made up? No, all rules are made up. Right? But does it matter that it's a silly rule that was invented for no reason? No, right? Because it still has a consequence. It still has a real consequence. And that's another aspect of socialization too, right? The idea that even though a rule might seem silly and might seem arbitrary and just, made up, if everyone goes along with it, it's going to have a powerful effect, right? And it's the same thing in society. It's the idea that knowledge is socially constructed. If we all believe something, it has a lot of power, even if that thing is not true, right? And again, look at what happened in the US a week or so ago, right? People, and what is still happening, people believe that the election was stolen. People believe there's voter fraud. People believe there's this weird QAnon cult going on. And all of those things are not true. But if enough people believe that they're true, you can have some serious consequences coming from that, right? And here we see just, the very basic version of it, where everybody believes in the rules of the plastics, and violating them has a real social consequence for Regina, right? Even though she's probably the one who made up the rule in the first place, right? But now it's coming around to bite her in the butt kind of thing. Yeah, what else? What else did we see there?
say the least.
The war zone. Yeah, everybody lost their marbles, right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, how do I introduce this question? Maybe we'll have to talk about it. I want to talk a little bit about the anger that sort of erupts finally in the school. And I want to talk a little bit about socialization, and I want to talk about gendered norms, so norms for men and norms for women. I want to talk about all those things, but I don't know a question to ask to get into that. And maybe it'll be better after we watch the end of the film tomorrow. So there's probably 10 or 12 minutes left, I think, in the...
That's 26.
What's
26.
26 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, and probably 10 minutes for credits, so maybe 16 minutes left. So, what's
Use the last 5 minutes?
you want to use the last 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, well, here's what we'll do. So online people, maybe what we'll do is we'll sign off for today. Tomorrow we'll come back, we'll debrief on this movie. Then we'll talk about stereotypes and prejudice and oppression, because we'll need to understand those before we go further. And we'll review the quiz and maybe talk about the first paper tomorrow too, okay? So online people, I'll turn you loose, and I'll see you tomorrow for all of those things. Yeah, thank you, and see you tomorrow.